Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I'm going to make a statement that's going to be fairly controversial, but it doesn't mean that it isn't true. And I'm not saying it to be mean, I'm not saying it to be condescending. I'm simply making an observation of something I've noticed watching many people over the years, something I've noticed as a coach, and that's that people who aren't really strong yet, who do not have any practical experience, who actually think they know what works or doesn't work for them. Okay? And it can be lots of things. I mean, I've seen this with a lot of lifters who are like, well, this might work for everybody else, but it doesn't work for me. This doesn't work for me. And they don't squat 500 pounds. They might not even squat 400 pounds. And you have to look at them and say, really? Because there's guys who squat 800 pounds who it works for just fine. You think maybe the problem is you don't know what you're doing in general? Okay, and I want that to sink in. There's a lot of guys out there who are not particularly strong, who have made efforts to get strong. It's one thing if you're not trying to get strong, and I get that there are people out there who aren't trying to get strong at all. There are people who are accidentally strong. And that's the one that's fascinating. That should tell you a whole lot about where we get strength from. Okay. I mean, that's a perfect one. I know people who say things like, well, really high reps don't work for me. This doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me. A really high carb diet doesn't work for me. It's like, really? But I mean, case in point, how many people out there who do physique competitions? I got a coach now or a client who coaches bikini competitors. And that's been one of his beefs with a lot of powerlifters, is that he's got bikini girls who never maxed out, who come in and do rep work with chicks that he knew who are powerlifters, that they do rep work with their maxes. Okay? Just from doing tons of glute work. In other words, might be a heavier powerlifting chick who squats 225 for a comp max, and he have a bikini girl who can do 6 reps with it. That's her heavier working set, who weighs 40 pounds less. Should tell you a lot about where strength comes from right there. Hypertrophy is a big part of it. Hey, that's a big part of it. Size equals strength potential. Right? But you'll see people who don't have a base, and they're convinced, though, this is what works for me, this is what doesn't work for me. And the reason why it doesn't work for them, they've tried something, and maybe something in their training didn't go the way they want. Maybe they tried some well-proven, very effective modality. They didn't implement it correctly, or they didn't do it correctly in the context of their overall training. Maybe they tried to implement certain types of programming and they don't know basic form. Like, they literally cannot even perform the exercises. Nothing wrong with the method. It's that they do not know how to perform even basic barbell movements. Okay? Same people also, well, using that form doesn't work for me. And we're talking it'll be basic stuff. I see it in comments. I've seen it in clients. People will say, well, this doesn't work for me. Well, it's like, well, what you're doing doesn't work for you either. Or this works for me. In which case you have to look at them and go, if it works for you, then why aren't you really strong? Well, I just haven't done it long enough. You're convinced you're doing the right method, but you haven't done it long enough. Again, we come back over to the problem with the logic that these people have. They lack the practical experience. Okay, something helped you get to a 300 squat. Okay, fine. A lot of things help people get to a 300 squat. There's a lot of methods. How do you know it's going to work forever? Because I can tell you that any training protocol that successfully gets you to stronger while still having very low numbers, unless it's a very advanced protocol, right? I mean, I get it. If it's conjugate, you're running conjugate, or you're running a Russian squat program. Okay, fine. It took you from 200 up to 300. But unless you're doing something like that, I promise you that whatever method you use to get from 200 to 300, it is not going to get you to 400, and it almost certainly isn't going to get you to 500. Okay, it may not get you to 600. These people lack the practical experience. Oftentimes they've run some basic training, basic programming for novices, got some gains off of it, and they think they know what works. But they don't have the practical experience. They don't really know what would work long term. They only know what seemed to have helped them for a few months. Hey, that is not the foundation for having any amount of knowledge. It's the lack of practical experience. Okay? They don't know what works for them. And that's really the big deal when someone says, well, this works for me, and it's like, clearly it hasn't. It's like when we all have that family member, well, this is what I do for diet. This works for me, and they're still 50 pounds overweight, and they've never been at a healthy body fat at any point in their adult life. Okay? And then they say, well, this diet approach works for me. I've lost 10 pounds or 15 pounds here or there doing it. But they've never actually gotten to a healthy body fat. So they don't really know what works for them. Because all sorts of stuff that create any sort of calorie deficit will help you lose 10 pounds. Doesn't mean you're going to get to your goal, and it doesn't mean you're going to keep it off. And I would say that's the big one too. Any diet method that doesn't let you stay at that desired body fat doesn't work. I mean, I'd make the argument that a competitive bodybuilder who gets ultra lean, who gets to 20% body fat again in his off season, whatever diet method he used to get lean doesn't work for him. It wasn't sustainable. But I digress, back over to the point. If you haven't reached anything of appreciable value using a method, how do you actually know what works for you? How do you know? You don't. And what I would suggest to the people in these situations, defer to coaches and people who do have the experience. Okay? Defer to them. Don't try to just say, well, this works for me or that doesn't work for me. Well, you better figure out why it doesn't work for you. If something is a really time-proven effective method or tool and you don't get any benefit from it, yet coaches that you look up to or respect get enormous benefit from it, and their lifters and clients get enormous benefit from it, it might be time for you to seriously ask, what are you doing wrong? You better pay closer attention to what they're saying and less attention to what you think you're doing right. Because something is very, very wrong when a time-proven method doesn't work for you. There's something seriously wrong with your overall game plan. I mean, and it could literally be that you haven't even bothered to learn how to perform basic exercises correctly. And yes, it is often that bad. It really is. I've seen a ton of it. Okay? Which is easily fixable. But the point being, people who don't have any practical experience, they actually don't know what works for them or what doesn't work for them. All they know is that what they have been doing so far hasn't worked very well. Alright guys, well that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.